Hello everyone, a very good morning. Welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to our daily Hindu analysis. So let's begin by looking at the topics we're going to discuss from today's newspaper. We have 4 important articles for which we require a detailed analysis, both from a prelims and mains point of view. And after that, we shall also be looking at 4 other articles that are primarily relevant for your prelims. So 8 important topics are up for discussion today. Just stay with me for the next 60 to 65 minutes. I promise to cover all these topics comprehensively so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper. All you have to do in return is to press the like button, share your comments, and without fail, subscribe to our channel. Also, don't forget, as soon as the session ends, we have a quiz on our Telegram channel based on these topics. So do head to the Telegram channel after the session so you can revise these topics again. So let's get started with the first article from page number 6. Please note, all the articles we select is from the Delhi edition of the Hindu. So the page number would also be accordingly mentioned. The editorial here on page number 6 deals with the topic of Project Tiger. This is a very, very important topic. There has been a big development regarding Project Tiger and tiger conservation in India. I'm sure all of you would have seen visuals of Prime Minister Modi visiting the Bandipur Tiger Reserve in Karnataka, also the Mudumalai Tiger Reserve in Tamil Nadu, and announcing the latest data from the tiger census that was conducted last year. And also a very important initiative was launched by the Prime Minister as well on this occasion. So this was widely covered by the media. Plus this also marks the 50th year of Project Tiger. It's the 50th anniversary. So this makes the topic very, very important for environment and ecology. The topic is extremely crucial both for prelims and mains. So let's understand this topic in complete detail. Let's go beyond the article. Let's not limit ourselves just to the editorial. Of course, I will discuss the editorial analysis at the end. But first, let's examine all the related topics, the background, so that you can thoroughly prepare for this topic just by watching this session. Project Tiger is India's ambitious national level conservation program to protect the tiger population in the country and also to protect their habitats. It was launched by the then Indira Gandhi government in 1973. On the 1st of April 1973, this important conservation program was launched by India. So 2023 marks the 50th anniversary of Project Tiger. That's one reason why the topic is very relevant for your upcoming exams. Under this program, the focus has always been to conserve and protect the decreasing tiger population in the country. See, when India gained independence, according to several estimates, India was home to the world's largest tiger population, and it was estimated that India alone had close to 40,000 tigers. This was even after the large-scale destruction of tiger population during the colonial period, during the medieval times as well. Despite all the hunting by the royals, by the colonial rulers, still around 40,000 tigers survived in India's wild by the time of India's independence. But after this, there was a rapid decline in tiger population in the next 2 to 3 decades, mainly due to hunting and poaching, destruction of habitat, increased pressure from human activities. All these factors destroyed the tiger population in the country, and by 1970 it was estimated that India's tiger population had fallen to just around 2,000. So the key factors responsible for the drop in tiger population was hunting and poaching. Mainly, tigers are hunted for their skin, the pelt, the bones, even the tiger teeth and nails are very valuable in the wildlife black markets. They are trafficked at very high prices. Along with that, habitat destruction, increasing urbanization, industrialization, loss of habitat, right? Deforestation, climate change, all these factors have driven tigers towards almost extinction, thus making tiger an endangered species according to the IUCN. In 1973, the IUCN notified the tiger as an endangered species on its red list. This pushed the Indira Gandhi government to take immediate proactive steps to protect the dwindling tiger population of the country. Just 1 year before this, in 1972, India had enacted the Wildlife Protection Act. A key legislation had been enacted that would provide legal backing to protected areas in the country, such as national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had started giving more priority for environment conservation. On these lines, the idea of setting up tiger reserves was proposed, and a dedicated project was conceptualized for this purpose to set up and maintain the tiger reserves. So this was Project Tiger. It was launched at a crucial time when hardly around 2,000 tigers were left in India. Over the years, the project saw some success in the initial decades. By 1990s, the tiger population had actually increased. It had almost increased by 35 to 40%. And reportedly by 1990s, the tiger population stood at around 3,000. So this highlighted the success of Project Tiger, despite all the challenges that the program was facing. But however, the numbers were not very reliable because we didn't have any all India national level tiger census that was being conducted on scientific lines. These were all estimations that were being brought out, but the estimates showed that there was definitely an increase in tiger population because of Project Tiger. Now this is where you need to understand the structure of the program, the way in which it has been implemented, and what makes Project Tiger a relative success. See, one key aspect of Project Tiger is that it does not just focus on the conservation of the tiger itself. That's not the only focus. Along with focusing on protecting the species, it's also focusing on preserving its natural habitat. Please note down this key point. Project Tiger is not just focused on tiger conservation alone. It's not just focusing on the species alone. Along with focusing on the species, it is focusing on protecting its habitat. This has been built into the structure of Project Tiger. And other distinct features of Project Tiger is that it does not rely on creating fenced reserves like other countries. Many other countries, which are tiger range countries, they have created fenced protected areas where they physically create barriers in a protected area in the core zone in order to protect the tiger population. This strategy is not very helpful in the long run, and also it's not a natural way of conservation. India has not gone for this approach. Instead, we set up tiger reserves on the lines of national parks where core buffer zones are identified and the core buffer strategy is implemented. In the core areas, human population is cleared out. Any human settlements are asked to relocate to the buffer areas or to the transition zone. Several human activities are prohibited in the core areas. So through such regulations, we seek to protect the important species, the threatened species such as tigers. So India has not relied on creating fenced reserves. Instead, we create protected areas such as tiger reserves, give it enough legal protection, restrict human activities, provide for strict punishments and penalties, and through that, we have been able to succeed in our efforts to conserve the tiger population. The other unique feature of the program is that it has engaged the forest dwelling communities actively in the conservation efforts. The local indigenous communities, they play a critical role in conservation efforts, and they are given an important role under Project Tiger. This is what sets the project apart, and it has contributed to the success of the program. So that's why we saw an increase in the number of tigers by 1990s. But however, after 1990s, there was a loss in attention. The focus of the program declined. Plus, India started expanding exponentially. Our economic growth started happening exponentially with a significant increase in India's population. So from 1990s, we again saw a drastic decline in tiger population in the country. Hunting and poaching continued despite Project Tiger. Habitat destruction was accelerating due to India's economic growth and population growth. By 2005, there was a very serious concern, especially in Rajasthan, where tigers were being locally exterminated at the Sariska Tiger Reserve. This incident made global headlines, where tigers were being locally exterminated, openly hunted in the Sariska Tiger Reserve. This incident pushed the then Manmohan Singh government to initiate immediate reforms to Project Tiger. The Manmohan Singh government set up a task force to provide recommendations on tiger conservation and to reform and restructure Project Tiger. This led to a new version of Project Tiger being launched in 2006. So under this, a new institution was set up, the NTCA, the National Tiger Conservation Authority, with statutory backing. The NTCA has been set up through the provisions of Wildlife Protection Act, and it was made the sole authority responsible for administering and managing the tiger reserves in the country and for protecting the tiger population in the country. This was a key reform that was introduced. A dedicated national level institution was created, and along with that, a quadrennial census of the tiger population was started. Meaning every 4 years, a scientific census exercise would be conducted, which would be a nationwide exercise. For the first time, nationwide exercise was started that adopted scientific methods. It not only relied on visual sightings of the tiger to count the tiger population, it not only relied on traditional methods like identifying pug marks, the animal droppings, etc. It also started using scientific methods like camera traps, satellite or GPS based technologies, and even smart mobile applications to log and monitor the data and ensure that accurate census data was brought out. So since then, every 4 years, the tiger census takes place all across the country, and similarly in 2022, the latest tiger census was conducted, and the Prime Minister has brought out this data when he visited Bandipur. The tiger census data also has been brought out for 2022. That's what makes this topic all the more important. So the NTCA, which was set up, was given tremendous powers to check hunting and poaching to protect the tiger population and the tiger reserves. And it was even given the opportunity to set up a dedicated force to protect the tigers. A tiger protection force was set up, a local armed force which could protect the tigers in the tiger reserves and tackle the hunters and the poachers. Along with that, villagers were relocated from certain core areas by paying them adequate compensation in order to protect the core zones and preserve the habitat for the tigers. So all these measures were taken since 2006 under the reformed and restructured NTCA and Project Tiger. So this has directly contributed to increasing tiger population in the country, and you can clearly see from the graph here how India's tiger population has increased consistently over the last 16 to 17 years. According to 2006 census, India just had around 1,411 tigers left. These numbers have increased consistently, as you can see here. It jumped to 2,967 in 2018, and according to the latest census data, the initial estimates are showing that 3,167 tigers have been recorded. This is a credit to the success of Project Tiger. The clear numbers are still yet to come out. The state-wise numbers will be brought out. There might be a further upwards revision in these numbers as well, according to experts. This is still an initial estimate that the Prime Minister has released. According to the initial estimates brought out by the Prime Minister, the tiger population has increased by 6.74% compared to the last census, which was conducted in 2018. So once the final details are brought out, the specific details are released, you will see a likely increase in the tiger population, and also state-wise numbers will be given. Usually it is Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka which have the highest tiger population in the country. Karnataka was at the top, Madhya Pradesh recently took over, but these are the top states with the highest tiger population. There are 5 major tiger zones in the country as well, which have the highest density of tigers. For example, you have the southern belt from Western Ghats towards the Nilgiris, that includes Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. You have the northeastern parts of India, towards Uttarakhand as well, near the Jim Corbett National Park, and also the central parts of India and the western parts of India. These are the 5 major zones where tigers are found in very healthy numbers, and today India is home to the world's largest and dense population of tigers, and the credit goes to Project Tiger. So that is why the topic becomes very, very important. On this important occasion, to mark the 50th anniversary of Project Tiger, Prime Minister Modi launched an international initiative as well. This is very, very important for your prelims. The International Big Cats Alliance has been officially launched by India just a couple of days ago. Is that clear? Please make a note of this. This initiative was initially proposed by India in 2019. Back in 2019, the Prime Minister had proposed an idea of bringing all the tiger range countries and all the countries which have big cat populations together so that the 7 big cats of the world could be protected and conserved. Alright, there are 7 big cats which are identified: the tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, puma, jaguar and cheetah. So all these range countries, like for example, several African countries like South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Asian countries like Bangladesh, Bhutan, then Vietnam, Cambodia, right? And few South American countries, right? And few Central Asian countries. All these countries have big cats present in their ranges, right? They are distributed within these countries. So the idea of Prime Minister Modi was to bring together these leaders, all the range countries together, to give special attention to protect and conserve the 7 big cats. So this initiative is called the International Big Cats Alliance, and it has been formally launched by India on the occasion of 50th anniversary of Project Tiger. Alright? So according to the editorial, one needs to appreciate the success seen under Project Tiger. The editorial praises the numbers that India has achieved, but however, it does point out few concerns as well. One important point to note is that while the tiger population is largely stable, the challenges are not entirely addressed. Yes, the tiger population has gone up. This is good news. The population has remained stable as well in the last 14-15 years, which is also a positive sign. But the concern is the human pressure is increasing on tiger habitat. You see more incidents of man-animal conflict being reported from around the country. This is a direct result of habitat destruction due to deforestation, increasing human population and increasing human pressure on animal habitats. This is directly threatening the tiger population. This is a concern which needs to be addressed. Then if you look at Western Ghats, which has the most dense tiger population in the country, you need to note that Western Ghats itself is a biodiversity hotspot. Western Ghats is under tremendous pressure due to economic activities. In Karnataka, in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, in Maharashtra and Goa as well, there is tremendous pressure on Western Ghats due to expanding urban areas, expanding industrial activities. So this remains a serious concern because tiger population has been noted even outside the protected reserves. Even outside of the tiger reserves and national parks, tigers are seen to be roaming. And these population of tigers, they face the biggest threat. They are at the biggest risk of getting involved in man-animal conflict situations. In the core areas, within the protected areas, the tiger population is stable. That is good news. That shows the success of our conservation efforts. But since these are not fenced reserves, tigers they freely move around. They might even migrate from place to place. So tigers found outside the protected areas, they face the biggest threat. They could become vulnerable for hunting and poaching. They could increasingly face man-animal incidents, and in the process they might get killed, they might get injured, right? And the overall destruction of habitat is further putting stress in the Western Ghats belt. So this is another important point to note. Next, few states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, they are not paying enough attention. Their respective state forest departments, the state governments, they have to work with the central government, the Environment Ministry and the NTCA to protect the tiger habitats. In these states, where you find a significant tribal population and a forest dwelling community, there is significant stress on the tiger habitat. There is large scale mining, cattle grazing, harvesting of forest produce, expanding infrastructure and even forest fires. They're all posing a threat to the tiger habitats and tiger population. So it's very, very important for these states to step up and improve their efforts with regard to tiger conservation. And the last point to note, which has been made by the editorial, is that we have to keep in mind the rights of forest dwelling communities when you are focusing on conservation efforts. See, environment conservation has to be balanced with the needs for economic development, with the needs for the local economic activities and the local community, right? These are contradictory objectives. if you try to just focus on conservation, it might hamper your economic growth. It could affect the livelihood of the local population. Because as I explained, there are instances where in the core areas, the local communities might be rehabilitated. They might be vacated from the core areas, pushed out, and these settlements which have been there from centuries, they might be pushed out of the forest areas. So they have to be given the right compensation. They should be rehabilitated by the government. And since Project Tiger is giving a primary role to the forest communities and the forest dwelling communities, their livelihood, their economic resources should also be protected by the government. That balance has to be struck. Yes, tiger conservation is extremely important. Environment and biodiversity protection is a very crucial objective. But this should be balanced with the need for economic and social growth and development. The needs of the forest dwelling communities, their basic livelihood needs has to be kept in mind. Because these traditional forest dwellers, they reside in the forest. That is their home from centuries. They cultivate their crops, they practice subsistence agriculture, which is very sustainable. They even rely on forest produce, minor forest produce, right, which is again sustainable living. They even worship the forest, the nature itself, and they protect the forest as well. This is something that's integral to tribal and indigenous communities. So when these communities are playing a role in the conservation efforts, the government's duty is to ensure that there is a balance between conservation and the rights of these forest dwelling communities. This should not be forgotten. All right. So that is the point the editorial is making. And if you're able to understand and remember these key points, it is more than enough for both prelims and even for your mains. I do expect questions to come from here, factual questions on Project Tiger and analysis based questions on the same topic. Before I move forward, when the project was started, there were 9 tiger reserves in India. Today, according to the website of National Tiger Conservation Authority, there are 53 notified tiger reserves. Some reports say there are 54 tiger reserves, but according to the NTCA website, we have 53 tiger reserves as of now, because few more are in the pipeline. At least 2-3 tiger reserves will be added into the list. Now, take up an exercise here. Read about the tiger reserves of India, look at the map, see where they are located, and identify the tiger reserves which were recently added to the list in 2022. Note down the names and post that in the comment section below. Which were the latest additions to the tiger reserve list? Figure out which are these tiger reserves and mention those names in the comments below. All right. Now let's move to the next article from page number 6 that relates to Finland's membership of the NATO. And we have a related article on page number 8 in the text and context page of the Hindu. Both the articles are talking about Finland's recent membership of the NATO. So this makes it very, very important for us to understand what is NATO. I will explain all the key points related to NATO. We'll talk about the membership of NATO, the criteria, the process to join this grouping, and we'll analyze the significance of this development. All right? It's a very big development as far as global geopolitics is concerned, especially European geopolitics. The NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is an intergovernmental military alliance that was set up in 1949, immediately after the Second World War. It was established by the Western countries under the leadership of the United States at the beginning of the Cold War with the Soviet power bloc. As you know, after the Second World War, the Cold War emerged between the two superpowers. The Western countries led by US, they represented the democratic capitalist power bloc, whereas Soviet Union and the other Eastern Bloc countries of Eastern Europe and other countries aligned with Soviet Union, they represented the communist socialist power bloc. During this Cold War, where both the major powers were engaging in covert wars against each other, targeting each other, destabilizing each other, the US brought the Western countries together, especially West European countries together, to form a military grouping, a military alliance. And today there are 31 member states in this grouping. Until last week, it was 30 member states. Now that Finland has joined the group, the number has increased to 31. Out of which 28 are European countries. It was 27 before. Now Finland has joined. Finland is a European country. So there are 28 European members, 2 North American members, that is US and Canada, and as well as Turkey. All right, Turkey is a Eurasian country. So these are the member states of NATO, and it's headquartered at Brussels in Belgium. So as the name itself indicates, it's a intergovernmental military club or a military alliance. It was established by signing the Washington Treaty. Please note down this fact, could be relevant for your prelims. It was established through the Washington Treaty. And under the Washington Treaty, the Charter of NATO was brought out. And under the Charter, there is one very important article, that is Article number 5. There can be a question on Article 5 of NATO. What does it deal with? Article 5 of NATO deals with the principle of collective defense. This is the bedrock of NATO. The very core essence of NATO is to bring like-minded militaries and democracies together to provide for collective defense. That is, the members, they promise, they commit to protect each other and defend each other against any external aggression. If there is any attack against a NATO country, all the other members will treat this as an attack on their own country, on their own sovereignty. And they promise to mobilize their forces, their resources, to collectively fight the external threat. So hypothetically, if a NATO country were to be attacked by a third country, all the NATO countries will organize collective defense, meaning they will contribute troops, weapons, and funds and resources to collectively fight against that external threat. So Article 5 is the bedrock of NATO. It promises collective defense to the member countries. Is that clear? So this military alliance has seen considerable expansion over the years. Please pay attention to these two infographics. Both are very, very important. You can see the eastward expansion of NATO over the years, which is a deliberate attempt by NATO and the US to encircle and contain Soviet Union and later Russia, which is the successor state to Soviet Union. In the last 60 to 70 years, there has been a deliberate proactive attempt by the NATO countries to expand their membership, to bring more and more countries under NATO, especially in Europe, in Eastern Europe, so that Russia could be contained, Russia's influence could be contained, and Russia could be directly threatened. Just look at the membership of this grouping. These were the countries which were the founding members in 1949. The list over here. During the Cold War, few countries were added like Greece, Turkey, Germany, and Spain. Is that clear? But after the Cold War ended in 1991, look at the eastward expansion of NATO. Look how rapidly the NATO has expanded to Central Europe and Eastern Europe. Just look at the map here. All these countries you see here in Central and Eastern Europe, like let's say Poland for example, or Czech Republic, the Baltic countries such as Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania over here, right? They even share borders with Russia, all right? Then the Balkan states like Albania, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, all these Central Eastern European countries, they have been admitted to the group in rapid succession. One after the other, they've all been brought under NATO, which is a military grouping that promises collective defense. It means in NATO member countries, NATO troops can be deployed. NATO weapons and missile systems can be deployed. And this clearly threatens the major power here, which is Russia, the successor state to the Soviet Union. So this rapid eastward expansion of NATO is held responsible for triggering Russia's aggression, particularly against Ukraine. Because it's been proposed that Ukraine also is seeking NATO membership. When Ukraine was seeking NATO membership, that is what primarily pushed Russia to destabilize Ukraine. And also as Ukraine got closer to European Union and as it started moving away from Russia in 2014, Russia retaliated by annexing the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. It even sponsored a separatist war in eastern Ukraine. And now as Ukraine got even closer to US and Western countries, and as it was seeking NATO membership, last year Russia has invaded Ukraine, and this expansion of NATO has played a direct role in instigating the Russia-Ukraine war. Of course, this is no excuse for the Russian invasion. The Russian invasion is clearly against international law. It is illegal as well. But As far as Russia is concerned, from Russia's perspective, that is the justification. NATO's eastward expansion, increasing military deployment of the US in Eastern Europe, in countries like Poland and other East European countries, is the primary reason which triggered Russia to act against Ukraine. It's in this context that you need to consider why Finland has joined NATO. Alright, please look at the map again. You will notice that Finland is one other country which shares a direct border with Russia. So we'll analyze why Finland has joined the grouping. We'll understand the implications. But first, please take a look at the membership criteria and the process. This is very, very important for your prelims. See, under the Washington Treaty, which established NATO, there is another important article, which is article number 10. Under article 10, NATO maintains an open door policy as far as membership is concerned. It means NATO is not just restricted to European countries and Western countries. Any other country might also be invited by these members. The member countries collectively can invite another country to join the NATO. Or a country which is interested, which has similar interests and which meets the criteria, can apply for the membership as well. Alright? So it has an open door policy of accepting any country to join the alliance based on the country meeting certain criteria. The criteria is that the country should be a democracy. It should be committed to uphold the principles of democracy. It should tolerate the diversity within its country and the diversity in the world. It should adopt a free market economy. It should believe in capitalism and free open markets. And more importantly, the military forces should be under civilian control. Usually in democracies, the militaries, the armed forces are always under civilian control, under the control of the elected government, like it is in India. And they should respect the sovereignty of other countries. They should be good neighbors, not showing aggression against their neighbors. And they should be working towards compatibility with NATO forces. These are some basic criteria that have to be met. And the decision to admit a new member is taken by consensus. All the members have to agree. Now, for example, if Finland joined the group, it means all 30 members who were there, they all voted in favor of Finland joining the NATO. So decisions here are through consensus. This is the admission process, the criteria which has been prescribed under Article 10 of the Washington Treaty. Now coming to Finland, Russia and the equation with Western countries. See, historically, Finland and Russia share a very complex relationship. They have fought wars in the past, back in the 1800s. They've had border disputes, they've had conflicts. Plus, they've also had a history of cooperation and collaboration as well. So it's a very complex relationship between Finland and Russia, which are neighbors in the Nordic Arctic region. So Finland adopted the policy of neutrality after the Second World War. Please note down this key point. Finland adopted a foreign policy strategy which is popularly known as the Paasikivi's line. This could also be a prelims question. What is Paasikivi's line, which has been in news? The Paasikivi's line refers to Finland's foreign policy strategy after the Second World War that was followed by then President Juho Paasikivi. It's named after the then Finnish president. So between 1940s to 1950s, Finland adopted a neutral policy where it remained neutral during the Cold War. This principle of neutrality was the cornerstone of Finland's foreign policy back then, and this has remained until recently. Even after the Cold War ended, even when Russia came into existence, Finland largely remained neutral. It balanced its ties with Soviet Union and Western countries. For Finland, Western countries have been very significant, US and West European countries, and Soviet Union and later Russia also have been equally significant for Finland. So Finland was able to strike this balance with both the sides by adopting the Paasikivi's line, which is basically a foreign policy strategy of Finland to remain neutral during the Cold War. It's quite similar to India's policy of non-alignment and later India's policy of multi-alignment. All right? But as Russia got more and more aggressive in the last few years, Finland felt threatened as it shares a long border with Russia and it applied for NATO's membership along with another Nordic country, that is Sweden, which also has borders with Russia. Is that clear? This is not the first time that a neighbor of Russia has joined the NATO. All right? Before this, Norway, which is another neighbor of Russia, was a founding member of NATO. It joined in 1949. Former Soviet republics, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, they were part of Soviet Union. All three Baltic countries, these three Baltic states, which are neighbors of Russia, have joined the NATO. They are members of European Union as well. Then Poland, which was a crucial component of the Warsaw Pact and the Eastern Bloc, that was closely aligned with Soviet Union, also has moved away from Russia after the Cold War and has aligned with Western countries and has become a NATO member. So these key neighbors of Russia, they have all joined NATO. So Finland is not the first country. Finland and Sweden applied for the membership only after Russia invaded Ukraine. As Russia got aggressive, mobilized troops and attacked Ukraine, that is when Finland and Sweden felt threatened and they applied for membership last year. After following all the process, finally the members have accepted Finland and hence Finland has formally become a member of the NATO. Very soon Sweden might also be accepted. There are other countries waiting in line as well. Alright, so this is what you need to understand from this topic. With regard to the implications of this development, Finland joining NATO is likely to increase military tensions between Russia and Finland as well. Obviously, as Finland becomes a NATO member, it means it will closely collaborate with Western military forces. There is a possibility of American or European military troops being stationed in Finland, closer to the Russian border. And Russia will not take it lightly. Russia is likely to retaliate and tensions might increase between Russia and Finland. So this could have an impact on European geopolitics. Alright, so that is what you need to understand. Now coming to the next article from page number 7. We have an important column related to India-US relations. The writer of the column, who's an expert in international relations, he argues that the next 6 months are absolutely crucial for India-US relationship. So let's look at this article in more detail and let's examine the nature of India-US relations. See, India-US relations have also been quite complex. From 1947 to 1971, we had cordial relations with the US, but however, US was never comfortable with India's non-alignment policy. Alright, US did give some assistance to India with regard to food security, with regard to monitoring China's nuclear program, etc. There was some support extended by the US. It even gave support to our nuclear program initially, the civilian nuclear program. So decent cordial relationship was developing during the Cold War, but US never accepted India's non-alignment policy. So there was always an extent of mistrust in the relationship. But 1971 was a turning point as India liberated Bangladesh. The US firmly aligned with Pakistan, supported Pakistan during the war, and even threatened India with military consequences when India was about to liberate Bangladesh. So as US became hostile to India, India abandoned the principle of non-alignment and we embraced the Soviet Union. During the Cold War, we clearly aligned with the Soviet Union because of the American pressure. The then Indira Gandhi government signed the Treaty of Peace and Friendship in 1971, which is seen as a diplomatic masterstroke to protect Indian interests and to liberate Bangladesh by taking Soviet help against the American threats. So from here, India-US became hostile to each other. This was the hostile phase in the relationship that lasted almost until 2001. For the next 3 decades, from 1971 to 2001, India-US were quite openly hostile to each other. US would even try to derail our nuclear and space program. It tried to derail our nuclear tests, and eventually when India conducted the second nuclear test, US targeted India with economic and technological sanctions. But the relations started changing only from 2001, especially after 9/11 attacks, as India-US started collaborating in the field of counter-terrorism and defense and security relations. From here, India-US got very close to each other. Both were like-minded democracies. Both had similar concerns about the new rising power, that is China. They had similar values, they shared similar objectives. So from here onwards, they started building a very close economic relationship as well that included defense trade and defense cooperation. So today, India-US have become very close partners. In fact, this relationship is defined by several experts as the defining relationship of the 21st century. Alright? So many experts believe India-US as like-minded democracies could counterbalance the rising Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific region. So this is the broad arc of India-US relations. In this context, there are some important upcoming events that are lined up. And according to the writer, these next 6 months are extremely crucial to further build up India-US relations. Because even today, even though we are very close partners in several areas, even though our interests converge in several areas, there are many areas of divergence as well. It is still a complex relationship. There are many issues on which India-US don't have the same opinion. We don't see eye to eye. There are areas we work very closely together. There are areas where we diverge from each other. Hence, the writer says the next 6 months are crucial because there are some important events coming up. The first event is that finally the US has appointed a permanent ambassador to India after a 2-year gap. Recently, Eric Garcetti has been appointed as the US ambassador to India, and this will elevate the relations because for 2 years the position was vacant. And Prime Minister Modi is likely to visit US in June, and President Biden will visit India for the G20 summit, which will be hosted by India later this year. Plus, there will be frequent interactions between India and US at the highest level, even at the quadrilateral grouping and the I2U2 summit, which will happen. Right? I2U2 includes India, US, Israel, and UAE. These 4 countries have formed a close economic grouping called I2U2, focused on West Asia. The Quad represents the major powers of the Indo-Pacific, that is India, US, Japan, and Australia, which are looking to stabilize the Indo-Pacific region and counter the Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific. So at all these key platforms, India-US will be interacting closely. Hence, the writer says India-US, they need to address their issues, their differences. They need to take forward the relationship and cement their relationship. So in this context, let me quickly point out the areas of divergence between India and US. You need to know on what points, on what key issues we differ from each other. One important difference is the stand we have taken on the Ukraine crisis. Right? US is directly involved in the Russia-Ukraine war. As we understood, it played a role in instigating Russia. And now, US and Western countries are openly backing Ukraine by supplying funds and weapons. They have blamed the war entirely on Russia, targeted Russia through sanctions, crippling economic sanctions, and they have brought up many resolutions as well to boycott Russia. They expect India to take the same stand as they see India as a like-minded democracy. But India refuses to do that considering the important relations we have with Russia. Russia has been an all-weather friend for India. Back in 1970s, 80s, when US was targeting our nuclear program and space program, Russia was, that is Soviet Union, was backing our nuclear and space program. Russia was one of the few countries in the world which did not criticize our nuclear tests in 1998, along with Israel and France. Whereas US not only tried to derail the nuclear tests, but even impose crippling economic and technological sanctions on India. So Russia has been an all-weather friend for India. There is no way India can compromise its ties with Russia. Plus, India follows an independent foreign policy. Our foreign policy is based on the principle of strategic autonomy. India maintains an independent foreign policy focused on multi-alignment, meaning we will align with any country as long as our interests are being protected. To suit our national interests, we'll align with any country, irrespective of their mutual rivalry. US and Russia might be rivals, but we will not choose sides in this rivalry. We will seek good relations with US, we will seek good ties with Russia as well. That is the stand of India. So US does not appreciate this, and it has led to a difference between India and US. Another issue that is an area of difference is China. India wants US to take a stronger position against Chinese aggression, especially with regard to our border dispute. The US wants India to play a greater military role in the Indo-Pacific, in the maritime domain, because that is where American interests lie. In South China Sea, in Indian Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, China has posed a huge military threat to American interests. So US is pushing India to play a bigger military role, a maritime naval role. But India is not very comfortable with that. We want more support to deal with the border dispute in the Himalayas. This is where we are facing the biggest aggression from China. So we want US to take a stronger position, but US is more obsessed with the larger Indo-Pacific and the maritime domain. So that is another area of divergence. India is also seeking greater partnership with the US while we continue our close ties with Russia. This is something the US doesn't appreciate. Russia has recently brought out a new foreign policy strategy in which it has identified China and India as its primary allies. So US does not like this, obviously. Also, India works closely with groupings like SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India is not just a member of SCO, but this year we are holding the presidency of SCO. So US sees SCO to be contradictory to groupings like Quad. The US does not understand India's multi-alignment foreign policy because on one hand we are aligning with groups like SCO, which has Russia and China. On the other hand, we are aligning with groups like Quad and other groupings like I2U2, which is led by US, led by the Western countries, led by the United States. So the US sees this as a fundamental difference in the thinking of India and US. And recently the NATO has even made few overtures towards India. There have been reports of NATO seeking closer engagement with India, possible military exercises. Some have even gone to the extent of suggesting NATO might be pushing India for membership. Alright, these are unconfirmed reports, but however, there is some exchange going on between India and NATO. Potentially a discussion on closer military cooperation, maybe, as some suggest, that a potential membership as well for India. Alright, because India could meet all the criteria as we just saw. But this dichotomy in India's foreign policy is what confuses the US, and it leads to divergence between India and US. India is looking after its own national interests and the US does not understand this point of view. On the other hand, we do have a number of areas where we actually collaborate together and work together. For example, just last year we have launched a very important initiative, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. This will allow our industries, our R&D institutions, universities and startups and businesses to collaborate together in the field of emerging strategic technologies and critical technologies, such as artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, 5G communication. In these emerging critical technologies, close collaboration will be built between India and US under the ICET initiative that was launched last year. Recently, another meeting took place of the ICET initiative and a lot of new programs have been announced. This will bring about a lot of defense and civilian cooperation between India and US. Another important area of collaboration is the Indo-Pacific Partnership. India does have focus on the Indo-Pacific. We do have a dedicated doctrine to keep Indo-Pacific free, open and inclusive from China's rising aggression. As you know, China has threatened the territorial sovereignty and integrity of several countries in the South China Sea. It has openly challenged the territorial sovereignty of Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines and several other countries in direct violation of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. So India is interested in countering the Chinese aggression because China's activities in the South China Sea and in the larger Indo-Pacific is threatening freedom of navigation. It's disrupting global shipping. It's disrupting freedom of overflight. These are basic rights under UN clause and China is disrupting them and threatening trade, connectivity and stability in the region. So India and US have a common objective here, not just to boost security in the Indo-Pacific and counter China, but also to boost economic growth, promote investments, promote connectivity in the region. So these are areas of collaboration. Similarly, they are interested in diversifying the supply chains. Currently, supply chains are dominated by China. Both countries want to move away from this China dependency and create independent supply chains. They also collaborate very closely in the strategic energy domain. Recently in 2020, US-India Strategic Energy Partnership was launched to promote cooperation in the field of energy security, clean energy, decarbonization and climate change. So India and US have a lot of areas where they can actually work together. Right? This is just a sample that I'm giving you. So according to the writer, despite all the ups and downs in the past, there are still plenty of areas where India and US can work together and constructively build a strong relationship. That is why the writer is urging both the leaders, both the countries to take proactive measures in the next 6 months. He says the next 6 months are crucial. Without missing the opportunity, if both countries capitalize on this, if they make use of all the upcoming events, they can cement a strong fundamental relationship that will become the defining relationship of the 21st century. That is the viewpoint the writer is bringing out. All right. So with this, I would like to come to the fourth article from page number 13, that is related to Russia-India defense trade. The defense trade between Russia and India is under question. There are concerns about sustaining the defense trade between Russia and India. As you all know, Soviet Union and later Russia have been the primary suppliers of arms and weapons to India. Since the last 50 years, Russia and of course the predecessor Soviet Union, they have always been the top defense exporter to India, without doubt. But of late, concerns have come up here, especially because of the Russia-Ukraine war and the crippling Western sanctions that have been imposed on Russia. See, even prior to the war, India had started diversifying its weapon supply because Russian equipment, military equipment, is seen as unreliable, outdated, and slightly expensive as well. So, in the last 20 years, you can say that India had started sourcing weapons from US and Israel in order to diversify its dependency from Russia. Even though Russia remained the top supplier, Israel and US became the second and third top suppliers respectively. Right? Of course, Russia wouldn't like this, but still Russia retained the top spot. But now, the Western sanctions triggered by the Ukraine war has cast a shadow on the upcoming defense procurement for Indian armed forces. We have several important deals that are pending, like the S-400 Triumph missile system. It's an ongoing contract. Russia has supplied the first batch of S-400 missiles. A few more are pending. We are looking to procure naval frigates under Project 11356 of Russia. We are looking to modernize and upgrade the Sukhoi 30 fighter jets, the MiG-29s, which are the backbone of Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy. Right? All these projects are under shadow because India is finding it difficult to continue payments to Russia. See, if you look at our bilateral trade, not just defense trade, overall bilateral trade, it has jumped from $8.5 billion in 2022 to more than $41 billion by 2023. This is mainly because of the increase in oil supplies from Russia. In the last 1 year, India has bought large quantities of Russian oil and gas as Russia is selling them at a discounted price. Because of the sanctions, Russia is trying to bypass the sanctions and continue its oil and gas exports to keep the revenue flowing to fund the Ukraine war. So India is one of the biggest buyers of Russian oil and gas. We have stepped up the purchase of oil and gas because this helps bring down our import bill. Russia has given this to us at a discounted price. Plus, it helps India to continue its strategic relations with Russia. So while the bilateral trade has boomed, while the military relationship also remains very strong, the problem here is that India is finding it increasingly difficult to make these payments on time. If the payments suffer, eventually the relationship is also going to suffer, especially the defense exports from Russia to India. There are doubts over this being expressed because of the payment difficulties. Almost $41 billion is pending in payment from last 1 year. Basically, the whole trade bill is still pending. Last year's trade volume was around $41.6 billion. Most of it is still pending from India's side. India is willing to bypass the sanctions and overcome the sanctions, but there are practical challenges coming up. See, Russian entities have opened their Vostro accounts with Indian banks. All right, but the arrangement is still not very viable because Indian institutions, India's financial and banking sector, we have a lot of exposure to the Western market. They all feel threatened that if we bypass Western sanctions, the sanctions could hit India's banking financial sector and Indian institutions, Indian companies might take a big hit. So Indian banks, Indian financing institutions, and even Indian companies are still hesitant to engage with Russia because of their exposure to the Western market, which is dominated by the US dollar. Russia is expecting in payments in rubles, in Russian rubles. But making payments in alternate currency is also problematic because this could again lead to problems for India, challenges for India. India still does not have full faith in using the Russian ruble for transactions. This could increase the cost of transactions for India in the long run. So India is not completely on board on using Russian ruble for alternate payments. We have offered rupee-based payments, but Russia is not completely ready to accept this. For the time being, few rupee-based payments have been made. But in the long run, Russia is not comfortable and happy in taking rupee-based payments, because Russia cannot do much with an overabundance of the Indian rupee. Indian rupee is not fully convertible. It's not useful outside of India, right? So Russia's options get limited if it's taking rupee-based payments from India. It can spend that only within the Indian market. So Russia doesn't prefer rupee-based payments, but India has problems with ruble-based payments. And in general, we are concerned about Russia's aggression, the sanctions, because the Western sanctions might hit our companies and banks directly or indirectly. So all these challenges have had a direct impact on the sale of arms. In general, the import of Russian arms and weapons has seen a decline. All right, this is because of the diversification. As India has sourced more weapons from US and Israel, the Russian share in the Indian defense market has definitely declined. It has fallen from 69% to 46%. But however, Russia and India remain very close defense and military partners. There is no doubt. But in the future, the challenges are likely to increase as long as the war continues, as long as the sanctions remain on Russia. All right? Of course, there are opportunities available which India-Russia can explore, but there are challenges to this. Opening the Vostro account was one example, where Russian entities were allowed to open Vostro accounts in Indian banks with Indian partner banks. So payments could be made, alternate payments could be made. But can it be sustained? That is the question. So that's why there is a shadow on Russia-India trade, especially the defense imports India would be making from Russia. All right? So that is what you need to understand from here. So now we come to the last part of today's discussion, that is Prelims Bytes. I will take you through some important articles, very short articles, but important for your prelims. We have an article on page number 1, according to which India's Home Minister Amit Shah has paid a visit to Arunachal Pradesh. He has visited a strategic location. Please note this down. He has paid a visit to an important location along the China-Myanmar border. Near the China-Myanmar border, there is a tri-junction point with Arunachal Pradesh. All right. So Amit Shah, India's Home Minister, has paid a visit to this tri-junction point in Arunachal Pradesh, where there is a border with China and as well as with Myanmar. There were two reasons why this visit has happened. One was to send a clear message from India's side that Arunachal Pradesh is India's territory. Just a couple of days ago, I discussed the same argument with regard to an article on India-China relations. Remember, I told you recently China has renamed few places in India's Arunachal Pradesh. So this is a counter of India. India has sent out a firm message by organizing a high-level official visit that Arunachal Pradesh is very much an integral part of Indian territory. The second reason why the visit happened is to launch a new program called Vibrant Villages Program, which is very, very important for your prelims. During this visit, Amit Shah has reiterated Arunachal Pradesh is part of India. He has met with ITBP soldiers who are responsible for guarding India-China border. ITBP soldiers are responsible for guarding this critical border. This is the designated border guarding force to protect the India-China border under one border, one force policy of the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Home Ministry follows the one border, one force policy, where one entire border is guarded by one central armed police force. Like for example, our borders with Pakistan and Bangladesh is guarded by the BSF entirely. All right. Similarly, can you identify which is the border guarding force for India-Myanmar border? Please post the name of this force in the comment section below. So Amit Shah has met with the ITBP soldiers deployed here and launched a very important program called Vibrant Villages Program. China obviously has retaliated against this visit. This is China's regular practice. Previously, few years back, even Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had visited Arunachal Pradesh. Even then, China had retaliated because China refers to Arunachal Pradesh as the Zangan region or South Tibet. All right. So it objects to any high-profile visit from Indian leaders and Indian officials. But India rejects these claims, and we have clearly made it very apparent to China that Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of Indian territory. Now coming to the Vibrant Villages Program, this is a border area development program. All right. It's a new initiative that's being launched by India to provide for development in border areas to improve the livelihood and the day-to-day life and the standard of living of people living in the border villages. Because people who reside in the border villages, they are the first line of defense of the country. They should act as eyes and ears of the country. They should have a sense of belonging towards the country, a sense of loyalty, patriotism. They should work with our security forces, armed forces, intelligence agencies, pass any information, because they act as the first line of defense. In border areas, especially in sensitive border areas, it's critical to keep the border population in your favor. You cannot do this if you don't provide for development, if you don't improve the conditions in the border areas. So we have an old program on similar lines called BADP, Border Area Development Program. This is being implemented from 1980s by the Ministry of Home Affairs. This program initially was implemented only along the Pakistan border. Later it has been expanded to cover all the land borders of India. So in all the border districts along the borders with Pakistan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, China, Nepal and Bhutan, in all the border districts, there is a parallel program being implemented called BADP, Border Area Development Program. This is an old program. Under this, the focus is on building infrastructure, providing electricity, water supply, providing basic education, healthcare, creating livelihood opportunities, skill development initiatives, etc. Similarly, a specific new initiative has been launched to focus entirely on the northern border of India, that is with China. The Home Ministry has made it clear that this is a separate program. It does not overlap with BADP. BADP is for all the land borders. Vibrant Villages program is specific to the China border. It will be implemented in 19 districts in almost 2,967 villages across 4 border states in the north of India, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, towards the northern borders of India essentially, and the Union Territory of Ladakh. Specifically, this program will be implemented here, the Vibrant Villages program, and in the recent budget, a massive allocation of 4,800 crore rupees has been made for this initiative. It will be implemented over the next 3 financial years, and it will provide for basic development, including connectivity and socio-economic development, to create an incentive for the local population to act in favor of India. Alright, so here I have given some basic details about the program. It will follow the hub and spoke model of development, where important hubs or nodal points of development will be identified, and it will branch out into other local village level development models. The Gram Panchayats will play a critical role, and a dedicated allocation has been made for road creation, road development. Connectivity and infrastructure is a top priority here. Please note down, it is different from your BADP. Border Area Development Program is different, it does not overlap. It is meant for all the border areas. Vibrant Villages program is specific to borders with China, to the northern states, the northern border states, and the Union Territory of Ladakh. Alright? And it will provide for economic development, skill development, resource creation, livelihood opportunities in these border areas with regard to China. Alright, this is what you should know about the Vibrant Villages program. Next, we have several articles on page number 1, 4 and even on page number 8 related to the governor's powers to give assent to bills passed by the state legislature. I'm sure you know the office of the governor has always been controversial. It's been alleged that the central government, the ruling party at the center, often misuses the office of the governor to destabilize state governments and to derail state policies. One issue is with regard to the governor's constitutional powers to grant assent to bills passed by the state legislature. In Tamil Nadu, for example, there is a direct standoff going on between the governor R.N. Ravi and the government of Tamil Nadu. The Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Stalin, has said there is a need to amend the constitution to end the dependency of the state legislature on the governor for giving assent to bills. There's another article in the front page itself where the Tamil Nadu legislature has adopted a resolution asking the centre to set a time limit within which the governor should be bound to clear the bills that have been passed by the state legislature. Similar issue was happening in Andhra Pradesh as well, Andhra and in Telangana. In both Andhra and Telangana, similar issues had propped up. The Telangana government had even approached the Supreme Court asking for a push to the governor to give assent to bills which had been passed by the state legislature. At the last minute, before the Supreme Court's hearing, Telangana governor has given her assent to 3 pending bills that had been passed by the state legislature. So this brings us to the point of Article 200 in the Indian Constitution, which grants the powers to the governor to provide assent to the bills passed by state legislature. You should know the provision here. Under Article 200, governor of a state has the powers to grant assent to bills passed by the state legislature. Once the bill is passed, right, by the state legislature, it becomes a law only if the governor assent has been provided. Here the governor has a discretion. Governor can send the bill back, ask the state legislature to reconsider if the governor is not happy with the provisions. If the governor feels that the law being proposed is not in line with the constitutional provisions and central laws, then the governor can send the bill back asking for a reconsideration. But if the legislature adopts the bill again, with or without amendments, then the governor is bound to give his assent. Alright? On the other hand, the governor can reserve a bill as well for the consideration of the President of India. He can withhold his assent and reserve the bill for the consideration of the President if the proposed bill is again in contravention to central laws. However, the Constitution is silent on the time limit here. There is no time limit set in the Constitution within which the governor has to give their assent. The governor can withhold assent indefinitely, reserve the bill and withhold the assent even after the recommendations of the President. Let's say the governor has sent the bill back to the legislature has sent it back with or without amendments. The governor can just sit on it without giving assent because there is no time limit set in the Constitution. This is seen as a flaw, a constitutional flaw. That is why few states like Tamil Nadu are pushing for a constitutional amendment so that Article 200 can be amended, so that a specific time period can be set within which the governor has to grant their assent to bills passed by the state legislature. That is why Article 200 is very important. Next, on page number 7, there is a reference to an ongoing military exercise between India and US, the COPE India exercise. According to the article, Indian Air Force and US Air Force are jointly working in this exercise, COPE India exercise. US has even deployed strategic bombers like the B-1 bombers that can carry nuclear weapons. That's the first time strategic bombers are being used in an India-US Air Force exercise. And also India has asked for more information about how US dealt with the Chinese spy balloon that was recently reported and how they shot down the spy balloon, what measures they took to shoot it down. Because India had a similar experience. We had spotted a similar Chinese spy balloon over Andaman Nicobar Islands. So there has been an exchange of military information regarding the Chinese spy balloons and how to deal with the threat. So COPE India is a major exercise involving the Indian Air Force and the US Air Force. Is that clear? It's very important for your prelims. It's an Air Force exercise between India and US. Similarly, there are other important military exercises between India and US, such as UPSC between the two armies, Vajra Prahar between the special forces of India and US. Then we also have exercise Tarkash, which is a specific exercise on counter-terrorism between India's NSG, National Security Guards, and special forces of the US. Then we have multilateral exercises like Malabar Naval Exercise involving Japan and Australia as well. Alright? This time in COPE India exercise, please note down, Japan has been invited as an observer. Japan is participating in the COPE India exercise along with India and US as an observer country. There are other exercises hosted by US like Red Flag, RIMPAC. These are multilateral Air Force and naval exercises respectively organized by the US, in which India is also invited along with many other countries. Alright, Malabar, Red Flag, RIMPAC, all these are multilateral exercises involving India, US and many other countries, many allies of US. Okay, in Malabar, Japan, Australia are involved, but with Red Flag and RIMPAC, many NATO allies of US are involved. So India participates in these multilateral exercises as well, and we have bilateral exercises such as COPE India, UPSC, Vajra Prahar and Tarkash. So please remember the names of these military exercises between the two countries. They are very relevant for your prelims. Now coming to the last article from page number 10, there is a mention of a strategic tunnel, the Zojila Tunnel, and Union Minister Nitin Gadkari has said very soon India will be completing this strategic tunnel project and it might be open before the deadline, that is 2026. Within another 2 years, the Zojila Tunnel might be opened, and it's a strategic tunnel. You should know where it is located. Why is it very significant for India? Please look at the map here. Zojila Pass, a strategic pass in the Himalayan ranges, connects Srinagar with Kargil and further with Ladakh. Is that clear? It's a vital link. The Zojila Pass is a vital link between Srinagar and Kargil and Ladakh on the other side. The existing road that passes through Sonmarg, which you can see here in the map, it is not entirely reliable. It's highly vulnerable to landslides and avalanches. It's highly prone to getting blocked during the winter season. Especially during winters, for 3 to 4 months, the Srinagar-Leh highway that passes through Sonmarg and Zojila Pass, it gets blocked out due to heavy snowfall. And there are landslides as well during the other months. So it's a very risky, unviable route for not just for the people and civilians, but even for our armed forces. This is a strategic area as we have a standing conflict here both with Pakistan and with China, right? That is why India is constructing a strategic tunnel. You can see here, a bypass is being built. A tunnel under the mountains are being built here, the Zojila Tunnel, which will extend for nearly 14 kilometers. This in itself is an engineering marvel, because building these projects in the Himalayan heights is not an easy task. But India is almost completing this project. Very soon it will be inaugurated according to the Union Minister, and it will be a strategic tunnel that will give all-weather connectivity between Srinagar and Leh. It will help us connect with Kargil, Ladakh, regions of Leh throughout the year, even during winter season, without the fear of landslides, and even during winter season. So it will not only boost economic activity, it will not only help the local civilians, it will also help our troops, the Indian Army especially, to quickly mobilize troops and deploy them towards the Pakistani and the Chinese border. Alright, so that is what you should know about the Zojila Tunnel. So this completes my discussion with regard to today's The Hindu analysis. Please take up these two questions, mains questions, for your answer writing practice. Both questions are based on topics I've discussed thoroughly. Use those points to write your answers, post your answers in the answer writing portal, for which link has been given in the description below. Don't forget, head to our Telegram channel as soon as the session ends, because we have a quiz on these topics. It will help you revise all the topics we have studied. And do support us, do express your liking for the initiative through your comments, like the video, and also share it with your other aspirants. So that is it from my side. I hope it was a good, useful session. I'll see you again tomorrow. Till then, take care. Have a good day.